Welcome to topic number 4 of Modus Institute's Collaborwocky. We're talking today about check-in on meetings where lack of collaboration is the problem you are trying to solve.
It's not supposed to say is not the problem you are trying to solve. I wrote it wrong.
Okay. Well, then I guess that we all want to unvote then.
So I want us to talk. I've been wanting to have this conversation since I first joined Lavum and went through the meetings. I've been through the meeting section twice, and then I went through the whole meetings course again. And I keep thinking about a scenario that I'd like to just walk through and then see what you guys all or what you all have to say about it. So I was working at this marketing company in Texas, ran the PMO, and I was in charge. I got put in charge of the status meeting. So the status meeting was everybody who had any interest in technology. It was hosted by the CTO, and I had to run it. And it lasted 4.5 hours every Friday, during which time we would go through 100 projects. Many people were allocated at like 600% of their capacity. And it was like crazy town, and everybody would sit around the table waiting to be woken up for their turn to talk. It was the most awful thing, like the worst status meeting you can imagine. At this company, I decided to treat my job like a lab, and I studied all these different meeting techniques, and I practiced them, and I tried them all out, and I got to a point where if you were coming to my meeting, it was run like freaking clockwork. Like you got an agenda. I knew where I wanted people to sit. I just ran that thing. I could write the minutes before it started, and I felt like that was really successful. And then I took the meetings course, and I was like, damn. But the thing that I wanted to check in on, like, are there places and times where meetings have value even if you're not trying to collaborate? Or should it always, like, that's the part where my compass is a little bit bent, because I can't tell if it should always be collaborative or if there are instances where it is more of, let's just get everybody to sign the box.
Well, so if you're just trying to get everyone to sign the box, then the meeting has a point.
Okay.
So like, let's say you're buying a house and you have to go in to sign the papers with the escrow agent.
Yeah.
That's a meeting that should probably happen. And the purpose of that meeting is to produce something. In that case, produce a stack of signed documents.
Okay.
When I was at David Evans and Associates, one of the ways that they walked the walk and talked the talk and chalked the chalk of being a good, humane place to work was that every month we got together and the VP in charge of our office went over all of the books for the company as a whole. There was time for us to ask questions in there. It wasn't collaborative, but there was a definite point to that meeting. And opening up the bookkeeping software to everybody 24/7 is not a good idea. Right. So I would say yes, absolutely. But right now, the people err on the side of just doing stupid things in a room together, as opposed to actually defining what the meeting should be about.
Okay. Dave, knowing what you know now,
do
you think that you would have been able to create a visual system to give people the information they needed in that status meeting to prevent the need for a status meeting?
Well, see, that was the thing. It was a lot of the part of why that meeting was held was ego and status, and it was
political requirement.
People like giving other people instructions. So the point, I mean, we had visual systems in place. They were kind of project managey, but they were there. But nobody wanted to go look at them. They wanted to be told. Like, if I'm the executive, I don't want to have to go log into something. You come to me and you feed me what I'm asking for. It was like that kind of a thing. The thing that I think was a little bit anti-collaborative was I developed strategies for certain people. Like if Mark was my nemesis at the company, I knew that there were only certain rooms I could hold meetings in if Mark was going to be present. And I knew where I needed Mark to sit and who I needed to sit across from Mark so that Mark was immobilized in my meeting. Like, I was super manipulative about it.
That's the Machiavellian.
Yeah. I mean, but the meetings ran great. I mean, they were in and out fast. But
Well, you are architecting your environment.
Well, I was, and I was trying to. I mean, I think about the whole thing about if you invite somebody to your meeting that doesn't need to be there, it's a sign of lack of respect. And I would think about the people that I would invite to shut other people down.
Mm.
But I was trying to respect the fact that what I was serving, like I had better drugs than the other people.
Yeah.
Like it still wasn't good, but it was better than the alternative. Now I think I would design them differently. But that was just one of the things. I mean, if that was just wholesale a bad thing, or just there are times and places where you are just trying to get a thing done or get a thing communicated.
Was there any feedback from the attendees of these meetings that they were useful, they weren't useful, timing was not optimal?
They were shorter. I think I don't remember getting any direct feedback. But I know that the meetings ran less long. Okay. And also that the CTO did not appreciate being sat at the middle of the table in the section where the two tables that didn't quite meet up were like crooked, because I would put in there so we had less power.
Wait, was the CTO's name Mark?
No. No, but...
Okay.
I mean, I like... I mean, outside of being really Machiavellian, I like how you place the CTO. And Tony, just don't look at me in shock. It's not about but what I'm trying to tie this thread into is like the perception of power, and even using environmental cues to diffuse potential power in that sense. So that's not a strategy I would employ, and I'm sorry that that seems to have been the case. But I don't know, Dave.
It didn't honor and respect the people. Like, it didn't honor the people. That's the part about it that bugs me.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
I was gonna say the one thing that came to mind is you asked the question, does it always have to be about collaboration? And I was going to say, sort of. So when I first started facilitating remote teams, one of the things I realized is they needed space just to connect with each other. And so I got very loose on my time frames for things in a meeting. And if there was some sort of social interaction, I let it run for a while, which worked very well for the teams. They developed that sense of rapport, including executives. There was a weekly executive gathering at this one company they asked me to facilitate. And one day they came in and they went on for like 20 minutes on all kinds of sports things, but they were all engaged. They turned to me and they said, Mark, we're sorry. I said, no, that sounded like the most important part of the meeting right there. And they laughed. So,
Mark, you raise an issue that I've been thinking about all week. I had a conversation with a former client a couple of days ago, and we had done a right environment exercise with them. For those of you who don't know, Jim and I will go into an organization for a week and we'll help them set up the structure for a healthy culture, collaborative culture. And we'll introduce them to a lot of visual and collaboration tools. And a lot of those tools will prevent the need for unnecessary meetings. So I was having this conversation with the head of this one group, and I asked her if they have less meetings now. And she said, oh, no, we don't want less meetings. And I've never heard anybody say that. I said, could you expand upon that a little bit? She goes, it's the only time we get to see our colleagues because they're all working from home right now. Now more than ever, that sense of human connection. I think that we can repurpose meetings. I think it's completely okay to have people sitting in a meeting. Yes. I mean, obviously, if they're accomplishing the things that they need to accomplish, of course, but to have people talking about things that show that they are multidimensional beings, whose dog is ill, whose child just got their second master's and is now going into this exclusive program after she has been homeschooled her entire life. I like hearing the success stories of my colleagues.
Yeah.
I like knowing what they go home to. I like knowing when I like learning what cues I may have to pick up on for when they need something from me. So that's a really interesting point right now about, you know, repurposing meetings to just be human with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to
Yeah.
have that conversation up front to acknowledge the fact that because our larger goal is building rapport and getting to know each other, that we're going to maybe sacrifice what some people might feel is efficiency in order to build those stronger relationships? Because ultimately that's more efficient.
Because ultimately that's more efficient.
Yeah.
It's that if the people on your team don't know the other people on your team, then items the items that are actually processing information to create value aren't speaking to each other effectively. And so you'll end up with different bottlenecks just based on general misunderstandings because we don't understand the people that we're working with.
Yeah.
And anybody that's owned more than one car knows that every car drives a little bit different than every other car. Every stove heats a little bit different than every other stove, and so the things and the people that we're working with have variation, and we need to appreciate and cherish and make the most of that variation.
And if you want to get sneaky with it, which is what I did with a prior organization that we were working with, because one of their members of their leadership team was talking about how people were frittering away time during a meeting, talking about personal things. But then in another breath, they were talking about the importance of psychological safety. I'm like, you cannot have psychological safety on your team if first people don't feel that a sense of inclusion. Right. And how are they going to feel that sense of inclusion? Well, by showing each other a little bit of vulnerability and building that up. So you have to have those so superfluous conversations.
You have to have inclusion to have a sense of inclusion.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have an illusion of inclusion,
Yeah.
which is what almost every company has.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
And that's like whenever people say, I want to feel heard. It's like, no, you want to be heard. You don't want to feel heard. Like, hey, I feel like you heard me, and then completely disregarded every word that came out of my mouth. That's not going to help you. but so in order to do that, all of that stuff, whether it's psychological safety or whether it's inclusion or whether it's diversity or any of those things, we need to build the system that actually makes the most of those elements. So we don't want various types of diversity just so that we look like a Benetton ad. We want various types of diversity because everybody that brings their brain and their history to a problem brings a different perspective. And the more those perspectives can differ in healthy ways, the better we solve those problems. So Dave, I am certain that when you teach classes now, you don't go out and observe the people coming into the class and figure out which ones you hate and then make them stare into the sun.
No, but I don't do that. But I think there were two things that I was sort of hoping to accomplish with the topic. Like one is when I went through that section, I couldn't figure out where a meeting that was like to get everybody on the same page about something, like where it was really like an informational push. I couldn't figure out where that fit, and I wanted a place to ask about that. But the other thing is like, what would have been a better way to solve the problem? Is it just get with leadership and get them to figure out why are we having this meeting? Because they were not in it. I mean, they were so far in the waterfall. It was like unrecoverable.
What way to ask that with 1 second left? Ding. All right, so I'm going to hit extend topic. And then I'm going to extend the topic. Yeah. So this will be our longest episode so far. So this is the situation that you were in. You had an organization made up of individuals in teams trying to create value. There were various impedances and bottlenecks to getting work done. In this case, they were taking the form of unnecessary meetings and power plays through controlling people's location and attention.
Mm-hmm.
The way that there's only three ways to get around that, and only two of them don't involve either murder or getting people arrested. So the legal ways of dealing with this would be, one, to quit, which also isn't necessarily a one that people want to sign up for initially. But then the last one, and the only one after that, is to figure out what systems you can change to get you closer to changing the root causes of that behavior.
Okay.
And your issue there was that you were dealing with people at all levels of authority who did not have an existing option to behave differently.
Mm.
So some of those people who were jerks were probably just following the same system that they'd always followed.
Yeah.
And then that was Jessica rabbiting them. There were other people
Not
that
a
you
jerk.
worked with.
She's just drawn that way. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The system makes her into that.
Yep. And then there were other people who were actual jerks.
Yeah.
But what we can't do is say I'm gonna use a format to get out of that. So no Kanban or no affinity mapping exercise or no meeting is going to stop you from detoxifying a work environment. And it's very rare that you can go the EPA way and call the whole company a Superfund site and then just start digging. So then what happens is you have to like systematically go through and say, okay, I've got these 10 square meters of space. I'm going to detoxify this first. And then I'm going to detoxify this. And then I'm going to detoxify that. And then see gradually if that helps you overcome the toxicity.
Okay.
One of the
You want to de-Gowanus Canal that culture, right?
That's right. Yeah, you want that Ohio River not to flame anymore. But what you can't do is just go throw a blanket on it and say, "Look, Ohio River, don't burn."
Yeah.
We were talking to a client, or I was talking to a client earlier today who was having an issue with upper management, and they wanted upper management to get better. So they wanted us to come in, and they were going to inflict us upon upper management. And I told him, I was like, that works as well as when upper management tells you, to go fix yourself.
Yeah.
So this is hard, and it's why divorce is so common. Is that sometimes it is appropriate to end a relationship, and other times it's just easier to end that relationship. And gosh, so many times Tony Ann and I have been put in the position of upper management getting angry with the people that work for them, putting us in the position of fixing them, and then doing absolutely nothing to help the system get better.
Yeah.
And then, then that becomes a class war.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that. I hate class wars like nobody's business.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate having the opportunity to raise that topic.
All right.
Because I was super nervous about it.
Okay. I'm gonna move that to done.